All right, we want to go back to our still developing story. There are reports that Tashfeen Malik pledged allegiance to ISIS online. And we have with us on the phone now our senior national security analyst, Juan Zarate. Juan, this is the first time we have ever heard anything from U.S. officials regarding Tashfeen Malik and a possible connection here. What do you make of this news? According to U.S. officials, according to these reports, she pledged allegiance online to ISIS.
Be a troubling piece of information, but it's going to be a critical one because it's the thread through which now the FBI and U.S. Counterterrorism officials will pull the thread to determine how much of a connection there is really to ISIS and to overseas direction. This could be a case where she was simply, or she and her husband were inspired by the message or narrative of ISIS to attack in place, attack fellow citizens. It could be something more nefarious and even more troubling, something that represents a directed group, a couple, to actually engage in an attack where they're established in Southern California. And so this is a troubling piece of data. We'll have to see how it plays out, but certainly U.S. officials are going to be looking very carefully at what kinds of connections there are. And it explains in part perhaps why the communications of these two individuals are so important and why they may have sought to delete them before perpetrating the attack.
So talk to us a little bit about inspired versus directed and how that will help the FBI if they find out that indeed it was one or the other.
Well, this is a difficult question, and Director Comey has talked a bit about this distinction in recent months, and the fact that there's probably a hybrid as well, that the fact that you could have individuals who are motivated by a narrative but certainly not trained by an overseas terrorist organization and not directed by them, simply motivated and have seen the videos and the messages and then want to act out. That is more in the inspired mode. The directed is more what it sounds like, which is a direct connection between the foreign terrorist organization, some element of that organization, deploying these individuals, directing them, and perhaps even launching them at a specific time and place. And so those are the two options that we've typically seen. But there's always some gray between those areas. You could have individuals who perhaps have traveled overseas, had some contact, but perhaps were not directly deployed by a terrorist organization. And so, yes, they have contact. Yes, they are perhaps directly in touch with foreign terrorist organizations, but their acts may be more spontaneous, more organic, and may look much more like an inspired attack. And so the FBI is going to be looking at the nuance of how these individuals were involved, and of course they're very interested in understanding the intent here, in part because the intent will explain whether or not this is an act of terror, and will certainly help explain whether or not there are other actors similarly situated who present a similar and problematic risk and threat to the United States.
So, Juan, this new bit of information is coming out at a time when we have already known a few things about Tashfeen Malik, that she was from Pakistan, and that Syed Farook traveled to Pakistan. When you try to look at what dots to connect, what else here is significant and why?
Well, I think you've pointed to some of it, which is the overseas and recent travel. We will no doubt be looking to see where in Pakistan the travel occurred, whether or not any nefarious or suspicious contacts were made in Pakistan. We'll be looking at their communications online or otherwise. The FBI is certainly going to be looking at their associates and their networks in the United States and anywhere else. And I think, on first blush, none of this by itself, other than the Pledge of Allegiance to ISIS, appears nefarious, but put all together starts to paint a very troubling picture. Two individuals who may have been plotting and planning for longer than just a couple of days and may have had more direct contact with foreign elements than previously assumed.
And how about the amount of weapons that they had on them? Yesterday, we heard authorities describe the inside of the suspect's garage. It looked like an IED factory. So how does that play in, and could that possibly lead them to more people that were involved with this?
It could, and I think it certainly suggests, obviously, premeditation. That's a fairly obvious observation, but it does suggest that they had other attacks or perhaps other activities planned, and it could raise the specter that they were involved with more than just each other, that they were part of another network or had planned with connecting or animating others to attack as well, using the pipe bombs and ammunition and weaponry that they had assembled. But certainly this is not a workplace violence issue. Obviously, I think the data that we're starting to gather suggests that this is certainly premeditated, certainly of a grander scale than we had thought. And I think the big question now is how much of the external and foreign link is there to foreign terrorist organizations. And I think that's what this latest data point points to.
Juan, I'm wondering, in sort of the history of extremist-inspired folks here in the United States who have carried out attacks, has there ever been a woman, particularly a mother of a young child, a young baby, 6-month-old baby? The idea of that to a lot of people is just incomprehensible. Has there been a woman taking on a kind of role like this? And what does it say about the idea of inspired attacks, the dimension now when you're talking about a woman, you're talking about a woman with a small child, as opposed to a gunman we were used to seeing traditionally males?
Well, it's a great question, and I've been working in the counterterrorism field for almost 2 decades, and I can't remember an American case involving a mother like this. There certainly have been international cases with women involved. The Chechen Black Widows, of course, the suicide bombers, the women there. You've had Palestinian women suicide bombers who've been mothers. You've had other instances of mothers being involved. And certainly with ISIS recruiting more women and trying to inspire more activity by women from a militant standpoint, that is certainly happening in the Middle East. But this would be the first time I can think of and remember, I'll have to go back and check, but that we've had a woman involved in this serious of an attack. And if in fact she was involved with foreign terrorist elements, the first time that you've had somebody in such an important operational role be a woman and a mother. It certainly does underscore what a lot of us have been saying, which is that women are playing a more prominent role in these terrorist organizations. More of them are being radicalized, more of them are being operationalized, that ISIS is purposely targeting women, and that the old paradigms that we've been used to of a distinct gender role is really not at play when you talk about the new terrorism that ISIS is trying to inspire. And so we'll have to see how this plays out, but I think this does rupture some of the orthodoxies and some of the assumptions that we've made in the past about what terrorist operatives and operations might look like.
All right, Juan, and we do want to let our viewers know that CBS News has confirmed that the female attacker, Tashfeen Malik, pledged her allegiance to the ISIS leader, Baghdadi, in a posting. This is just breaking today, and it definitely looks like, more information is coming in. It looks like she could have been basically behind the mastermind behind this attack.
So I just want to ask you, Juan, based on that new confirmation that we have, based on what you just said, Juan, about how in your recollection, in your decades of experience, you had not seen an operative, you had not seen an extremist who fit this profile of a mother, a woman, a mother. What does that mean then for counterterrorism officials and their posture as they look at the threat landscape here in the United States?
Well, what it means is it's much more complicated than ever before. You have diverse nationalities involved. You have American citizens who are involved more and more, those who have traveled abroad and those who are simply inspired. And certainly the fact is you have women that are involved. And, the FBI has investigations underway and has had investigations for a number of years on women and extremists who are potentially problematic. And so I think the reality is we are in a much more diverse terrorist landscape. It's one that involves potential U.S. citizens, of course, as well as women. And I think that makes the job of the FBI all the more difficult and puts the onus on families and communities to be much more vigilant about what's happening next door.
All right. And just to wrap up, we just do want to say that our, CBS News senior investigative producer Pat Milton has confirmed that the female attacker pledged her allegiance to ISIS, the leader Baghdadi, and we are going to have much more on this breaking development in the San Bernardino shootings. We're going to take a quick break here on CBSN. We'll be back in 90 seconds.